The immense, echoing library of Ravenswood Manor was silent, save for the rhythmic tick-tock of a French ormolu clock, its hand sweeping towards 4 o'clock. Lady Lysandra Atherton stood near the immense fireplace, her heart a frantic drummer against her ribs. She watched as Caius, the Duke of Ravenswood, approached the tea service she had prepared. His handsome face was currently obscured by a heavy book of parliamentary acts, his attention completely devoted to the text. Lysandra had done it. The dose was small, a colorless powder dissolved in the honey jar, administered with a steady, desperate hand. Untraceable, but enough to incapacitate him entirely, allowing her the brief, crucial window to secure and destroy the calamitous debenture, the document that gave Caius legal claim to her entire family estate, granted after her father's late-night drunken wager. As the Duke set down the heavy tome and reached for the fragile porcelain teacup, his fingers brushing the handle, Lysandra braced herself for the sight of him falling. A voice, precise and cold as a winter blade, sliced through the air. "Don't touch that, Caius." Dowager Duchess Vespers, a woman whose reputation was forged in cold steel and societal fear, stepped out from the shadows of the velvet drapes she had been silently monitoring. She wore a severe black silk gown and an expression of chilling, absolute calm. She made no move to alert the staff. Instead, her eyes, sharp as cut glass, locked onto Lysandra. "You are Lady Lysandra Atherton, Lord Atherton's daughter," Vespers stated, her voice lowering to a terrible whisper. "I know your gloves are clean, your reputation is intact, and your debt is ruinous. And I saw your hand, child. You poisoned his tea." Vespers reached out and gently moved the teacup away from Caius's grasp, the fragile sound of china meeting silver, a monumental crash in the sudden silence. "The public disgrace of Newgate and the gallows is far too swift an end for the depth of your crime. You owe me the cost of my son's life, and your life will be spent paying that price." The Duchess moved close, her silk whispering against the carpet. "You will be my pawn for 6 weeks, and if you fail, I will reveal the 7-word secret that will destroy your family forever." Lysandra stood immobilized, the blood draining from her face as she looked into the Duke's bewildered eyes. The price of her family's safety had just become her soul.
Vespers dismissed Caius with a fabricated story about urgent financial matters requiring private discussion. The Duke, ever the gentleman, bowed and departed, leaving Lysandra alone with the woman who now held her life in an iron grip. The moment the library doors clicked shut, Vespers turned to her fully. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a chair positioned deliberately away from any exit. Lysandra obeyed, her legs threatening to give way beneath her. "You attempted to murder my son for a piece of paper," Vespers began, circling Lysandra like a predator assessing prey. "Desperate, foolish, and remarkably bold. Your father's gambling debts have left your mother and younger sister facing destitution. The estate will be seized within the month, am I correct?" Lysandra's throat constricted. She managed a single nod. "Then listen carefully to my terms. Tomorrow morning, the Duke will fall gravely ill. A fever, the physicians will say. Nothing connected to your pathetic attempt, I assure you. He will be confined to his chambers for 6 weeks of recovery. During that time, you will remain here at Ravenswood Manor as his appointed assistant and protector." "Protector?" Lysandra whispered, her voice barely audible. "My son has enemies, real ones, men who would see him dead to claim his title and fortune. You will manage his correspondence, attend to estate business in his stead, and most importantly, you will ensure no harm comes to him. You will live in the East Wing under constant supervision. You will not flee. You will not contact your family. Vespers leaned close, her breath cold against Lysandra's ear. And if you fail, if you attempt escape, if my son discovers your crime, if any harm befalls him under your watch, I will reveal the truth that will obliterate your family completely. 7 words, Lady Atherton. She broke the sacred oath of the North.
Lysandra felt the room tilt. The sacred oath of the North was an ancient covenant sworn by the founding families, a blood promise never to betray one's kin through violence or poison. Breaking it meant exile from every northern county, the stripping of all titles, and the permanent branding of the entire bloodline as oath-breakers. Her mother and sister would become untouchables. "Do we have an understanding?" Vespers extended her gloved hand. Lysandra looked at that hand, the hand that held her family's future. She thought of her mother's gentle face, her sister's innocent laughter. She took Vesper's hand. "Yes, Your Grace." If you can't stand people who manipulate others through fear and blackmail, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Type, "Nobody deserves that," because what happened next only got worse. The East Wing of Ravenswood Manor was beautiful and suffocating in equal measure. Lysandra's assigned chambers were decorated in pale blue silk and cream damask, with windows overlooking the estate's formal gardens. Under any other circumstances, she would have marveled at the luxury. Instead, she saw only the bars on those windows, decorative ironwork perhaps, but bars nonetheless. A lady's maid named Margaret was assigned to her, a woman of perhaps 50 years, with shrewd eyes and an economy of words. "Her Grace has instructed me to attend to your every need, my lady," Margaret said, unpacking the single trunk that had been retrieved from Lysandra's townhouse. "I will also be providing Her Grace with regular reports on your well-being and activities." Spy. The word went unspoken, but understood by both women. That night, as promised, the Duke fell ill. Lysandra heard the commotion from her chambers, the rapid footsteps of servants, the arrival of 2 physicians, hushed, worried voices echoing through the corridors. She pressed her hands against the cold window glass, guilt rising like bile in her throat. The next morning, Vespers summoned her to a private sitting room. The Duchess sat behind an imposing mahogany desk, surrounded by ledgers, correspondence, and estate documents. "Your education begins now," Vespers announced without preamble. "The Duke's solicitor, Mr. Grimshaw, manages the legal affairs. The estate steward, Mr. Pemberton, handles the tenant farms. The household accounts are overseen by Mrs. Blackwood. You will work with all 3, presenting yourself as my son's chosen representative during his recovery." She pushed a leather portfolio across the desk. "These are the current pressing matters. A dispute with a neighboring landowner over water rights, a request from the parish for funds to repair the church roof, 3 outstanding business proposals, and this," she extracted a sealed letter, "is particularly troubling correspondence from Lord Ashworth, who has been pressing Caius to sell a portion of the southern timberlands." Lysandra opened the letter, scanning its contents. Lord Ashworth's tone was friendly but insistent, his arguments logical, but somehow urgent in a way that felt wrong. "You suspect him," Lysandra said. "I suspect everyone," Vespers replied. "But yes, Lord Ashworth has always been too interested in Caius's holdings.
He was also conveniently nearby when my son suffered a riding accident last year. The implication was clear. You believe someone is actively trying to harm the Duke? I know someone is. You will be my eyes and ears. You will examine every document, attend every meeting, and report anything suspicious directly to me.
For 5 days, Lysandra worked under Vesper's exacting supervision, learning the intricate web of the Duke's affairs. She met with Mr. Grimshaw, who regarded her with suspicion, but followed the Duchess's instructions. She walked the estate grounds with Mr. Pemberton, understanding the scope of responsibilities. She reviewed accounts with Mrs. Blackwood, noting every expense. And at night, she lay awake in her beautiful prison, haunted by the memory of the Duke's trusting smile as he had reached for that poisoned teacup. On the 6th day, word came that the Duke had regained consciousness and was demanding to understand what had transpired. Vespers brought Lysandra to his chambers personally. The Duke's bedroom was elegant, dark wood furniture, forest green drapes, shelves lined with books and scientific instruments. Caius himself was propped against pillows, his face pale, but his dark eyes alert and intelligent. "Mother," he said, his voice hoarse but firm. "Who is this?" "This is Lady Lysandra Atherton, Caius. She has been managing your affairs during your illness at my request." The Duke's gaze moved to Lysandra, assessing her with precision. "Lady Atherton, what is the current state of my obligations?" Lysandra swallowed hard, then found her voice. "The water rights dispute has been temporarily resolved pending a surveyor's report, Your Grace. The parish roof repair has been approved and funded. I have declined Lord Ashworth's offer regarding the timberlands as the terms were disadvantageous. There are 7 letters requiring your personal attention which I have prioritized by urgency." She approached his bedside, offering a leather folder. As he took it, their fingers brushed briefly. The Duke's hands were warm, alive, so terribly alive.
"Efficient," Caius observed, scanning the documents. "And you rejected Ashworth's proposal. On what grounds?" "The offered price was 15% below current market value, and the contract included an unusual clause granting him first right of refusal on adjacent properties. It seemed designed to give him leverage for future acquisitions." The Duke's eyebrows rose. "You have a sharp eye for manipulation, Lady Atherton." He looked at his mother. "How long must I remain confined?" "Another 5 weeks at minimum," Vespers said firmly. "Dr. Morrison insists on complete rest. Then I will need Lady Atherton's assistance to continue. I cannot allow estate matters to languish." As Vespers turned to leave, she fixed Lysandra with a meaningful stare. "This is your task, your penance, your prison."
The days developed a rhythm that was both mundane and torturous. Each morning, Lysandra would arrive at the Duke's chambers with reports, correspondence, and matters requiring his judgment. They would work side by side, his sharp mind dissecting problems while she took notes and implemented his decisions. What tortured Lysandra was discovering the man she had tried to kill. Caius was nothing like she had imagined. He wasn't the cold aristocrat gambling away her family's future on a whim. He was thoughtful, genuinely concerned for his tenants' welfare, and possessed a dry wit that occasionally caught him off guard. When he learned that one of his tenant farmers had lost a daughter to fever, he personally drafted a letter of condolence and arranged for the family's rent to be forgiven for 6 months. "You're surprised," Caius observed one afternoon, catching the expression on her face.
I confess I am, Your Grace. Most landlords would not be so generous. Most landlords see their tenants as assets to be exploited. I see them as the foundation upon which everything else stands. If that foundation crumbles, the entire structure falls. He set down his pen, studying her. Tell me about your family, Lady Atherton. My mother mentioned your father passed recently.
The question was casual, but it struck like a blade. Yes, Your Grace, 6 months ago. And he left affairs in difficult circumstances, I gather. He did. The words came out clipped, defensive. Caius tilted his head. I'm not interrogating you, merely trying to understand the person who has been managing my life with such competence. You've made decisions on my behalf that I would have made myself. That suggests either remarkable intuition or knowledge of my character that you claim not to possess. Lysandra's heart hammered. She had been too efficient, too accurate. I simply tried to think through each situation logically, Your Grace. Logical and compassionate, a rare combination. He smiled then, genuine and transforming. I find myself grateful for whatever twist of fate brought you here, Lady Atherton. The guilt was a living thing inside her chest. She wanted to confess everything, but Vespers' 7 words hung over her like an executioner's blade. If you believe people deserve second chances, even after terrible mistakes, hit that subscribe button. People who manipulate through fear alone won't. And you need to hear what she discovered next.
3 weeks into her captivity, Lysandra couldn't sleep. The guilt and growing attachment to Caius warred inside her constantly. She had taken to walking the manor's corridors at night, finding some small illusion of freedom in the shadowed halls. It was during one of these midnight wanderings that she discovered the Duke's private study, a smaller, more intimate room than the grand library. The door was unlocked, and she slipped inside, unable to resist the pull of curiosity. The room was lined with shelves containing not just books, but personal items, botanical specimens preserved in glass, sketches of architectural designs, a collection of unusual rocks and minerals. On the desk lay an open journal, its pages covered in Caius's precise handwriting. Lysandra knew she shouldn't read it. She had already betrayed this man once. Reading his private thoughts was another violation. But her hand moved of its own accord, turning the journal toward her. The entries were philosophical musings, observations about human nature, sketches of inventions, but one passage made her freeze. I find myself increasingly isolated, despite being surrounded by people. Mother means well, but she sees threats everywhere and trusts no one. The few friendships I once had have withered under the weight of suspicion and duty. Sometimes I wonder if I will ever meet someone who sees me rather than the Duke of Ravenswood, someone who challenges my thoughts rather than flattering my position. The loneliness in those words pierced her. She had seen him as an obstacle, a name on a legal document. She had never considered that he might be as trapped as she was. Couldn't sleep, Lady Atherton. Lysandra spun to find Vespers standing in the doorway, a candle in her hand. I apologize, Your Grace. I was reading my son's private journal. Yes, I can see that. Vespers moved into the room. What did you learn? There was no point in lying. That he's lonely, that he wants genuine connection. And does that knowledge make your task easier or harder? Harder, Lysandra admitted. So much harder. Good. Vespers moved to the window. If it were easy, you would learn nothing. You attempted to kill a man you had reduced to a signature on a document. Now you are forced to see him as human. That is your punishment, not the captivity, not the threat of exposure, but the guilt of recognizing what you nearly destroyed. Vespers turned to face her. But do not mistake my observation for trust. Tomorrow, Lord Ashworth is coming to visit Caius personally, despite being told the Duke is too ill. That insistence concerns me deeply. I want you to observe everything. Lord Ashworth arrived at noon the following day, dressed impeccably and carrying an elaborate basket of imported fruits. Lysandra was positioned in a chair near the window, ostensibly reviewing correspondence, but actually watching every move the visitor made. "Ravenswood, my dear fellow," Ashworth said, his voice booming with false cheer. "I simply had to see for myself that you were on the mend. The entire county has been worried sick." "You're very kind, Ashworth," Caius replied, politely but reserved. "Though I must confess I'm surprised Mother allowed you up." "Your mother is a formidable woman indeed. She insisted Lady Atherton here remain present as well. Your new assistant, I understand." Ashworth's gaze moved to Lysandra, and she felt something cold slide down her spine at the calculation in his eyes. "Lady Atherton has been invaluable during my recovery," Caius said. "I'm sure she has." Ashworth smiled without warmth. "Tell me, Ravenswood, have you had any time to reconsider my proposal regarding the timberlands? I know Lady Atherton declined on your behalf, but surely now that you're recovering, we could discuss more favorable terms." "I've reviewed Lady Atherton's reasoning, and I concur with her assessment," Caius said firmly. "The terms were disadvantageous." For just a moment, something dark flickered across Ashworth's face. "If you're not interested, I won't press the matter." He paused, then added casually, "I also wanted to inquire about your plans for the estate's water access. I understand there's been some dispute with the Fernsworth property." Lysandra's attention sharpened. That dispute had been resolved weeks ago through private negotiation. Why would Ashworth bring it up unless he had been monitoring the situation closely? "The matter has been settled," Caius replied, his tone growing guarded. "Excellent. And the surveyor's report? Has it been filed with the county records yet?" There, Lysandra saw it clearly now. Ashworth wasn't making casual conversation. He was fishing for specific information about property boundaries and water access. Information that would only be relevant if he was planning some larger scheme. She caught Vespers' eye across the room. The Duchess had noticed it too. The visit continued for another 20 minutes, with Ashworth making several more seemingly innocent inquiries. When he finally departed, Lysandra found herself trembling. "Your Grace," she said carefully. Lord Ashworth asked very specific questions about property boundaries and water access. Combined with his interest in the timberlands, I believe he may be planning to assemble a larger holding that would effectively surround portions of your estate. Caius was silent for a long moment. "You're suggesting a long-term strategy to weaken my position?" "Yes." Vespers moved forward. "There's more. 3 months ago, I received an anonymous letter suggesting someone close to Caius was planning to harm him. Then came the riding accident, a saddle girth that was found partially cut, and now this mysterious illness. You think Lord Ashworth wants me dead or permanently incapacitated?" Caius said, face pale. "An estate without its duke would be far easier to manipulate." "Lady Atherton," Vespers commanded, "examine every document related to Lord Ashworth's business dealings with this estate for the past 5 years. If there's a pattern,
We need to find it."
Lysandra spent the next 3 days buried in the estate's archives, pulling every document that mentioned Lord Ashworth. Margaret brought her meals to the study as she worked, and even the suspicious maid seemed to soften at Lysandra's obvious dedication. What she found was damning. 5 years ago, Ashworth had purchased a small parcel of land from a minor nobleman whose son had died under suspicious circumstances, a hunting accident where the gun had mysteriously misfired. 3 years ago, he had acquired another estate after its owner fell ill with a mysterious wasting disease and died within months. Each time, Ashworth had been patient, sympathetic, and ready with an immediate offer to purchase lands from the grieving families at prices that seemed generous, but were actually below market value. And in each case, the properties he acquired were strategically positioned to control resources, water, timber, road access, that made surrounding lands less valuable and more dependent on his goodwill. "He's done this before," Lysandra told Vespers and Caius, spreading the documents across the Duke's bed. "Multiple times. He identifies wealthy estate holders, waits for an opportunity to create distress, either through legitimate accident or orchestrated harm, then positions himself as a helpful buyer when the families are desperate." Caius's jaw was tight as he reviewed the evidence. "And you believe I'm his current target?" "I believe you've been his target for years, Your Grace. The riding accident, your illness, these weren't random events." "Then we need proof," Caius said firmly. "Suspicion isn't enough. We need evidence that would stand up in court." Vespers leaned forward. "There may be a way. Ashworth has been pressing to visit the timberlands personally. If we allow that visit but set a trap, someone who could observe what he does when he thinks he's not being watched." "I'll go," Lysandra said immediately. Both the Duke and his mother turned to stare at her. "You?" Caius frowned. "Lady Atherton, this man may be a murderer." "Which is precisely why I should go. He doesn't see me as a threat, just as your temporary assistant. If I accompany him as a representative ensuring estate interests are protected, I can observe his actions, perhaps even catch him tampering with something." Vespers studied her intently. "You understand the risk?" "I do." Lysandra met the Duchess's gaze steadily. "I owe the Duke my protection. Let me provide it." Something shifted in Vesper's expression, a flicker of approval. "Very well, but you won't go alone. I'll have 2 of our most trusted groundskeepers positioned nearby, and you'll carry a whistle. At the first sign of danger, you signal for help." "Agreed." "Justice prevails if you're Team Lysandra. The manipulation and murder plots can't win. Now watch what happens when she finally fights back." The timberlands were located on the southern edge of the estate, a dense forest of oak and ash trees. Lysandra arrived by carriage with Lord Ashworth, who maintained his facade of friendly charm throughout the journey. They walked deeper into the forest, and Lysandra noted Ashworth's keen attention to specific landmarks: ancient boundary stones, the path of a small creek, the areas where the trees grew most densely. He was memorizing the terrain, planning something. Then she saw it. Near one of the oldest boundary markers, Ashworth knelt down as though examining the stone, but his hand moved to his coat pocket, withdrawing a small flask. He uncorked it carefully and poured a clear liquid around the marker. "Lord Ashworth, what are you doing?" He straightened quickly, his expression instantly transforming into a pleasant mask. "Merely testing the soil composition, Lady Atherton. I like to be thorough." But Lysandra had seen enough. That liquid had the same faint, acrid smell as the powder she had dissolved in the honey jar. Not a poison for a human, but something designed to weaken or destroy. If that boundary stone deteriorated or moved, it could create a legal dispute over property lines. "I see," she said carefully. "And do you often carry soil testing equipment?" "You're quite observant for an assistant, Lady Atherton." "The Duke values thoroughness in his representatives." "Does he? And yet he sent a woman alone into the forest with a man who may be dangerous. That seems remarkably foolish." He grabbed her wrist, his grip painful. "Let's discuss what you actually know, Lady Atherton." "Remove your hand from Lady Atherton immediately." The voice came from the trees, and both Lysandra and Ashworth spun to see the Duke of Ravenswood emerging from cover, supported by two groundskeepers but standing on his own. His face was still pale from his illness, but his eyes were hard as steel.
"Your Grace," Ashworth said, releasing Lysandra and stepping back. "I didn't realize you were well enough to travel." "Apparently, there are many things you didn't realize." Caius moved closer, his breathing slightly labored, but his voice steady. "Including that my mother and I have been investigating your pattern of land acquisition for the past week. We know about the deaths, the convenient accidents, the strategic purchases." "Speculation and coincidence," Ashworth said smoothly, but his hand was moving toward his coat again. "It was you," Lysandra said suddenly, understanding clicking into place. "The Duke's illness. You poisoned him. You must have bribed someone in the household." Ashworth's expression turned ugly. "Clever girl, though not clever enough to realize you're both going to have an unfortunate accident here in the woods today." He pulled a pistol from his coat. Before he could aim, Lysandra moved. She grabbed the flask he had dropped and threw its contents directly at Ashworth's face. He screamed, clawing at his eyes as the acidic liquid burned. The groundskeepers rushed forward, tackling Ashworth to the ground and wrestling the pistol away. Within moments, he was restrained, still cursing and thrashing. Caius swayed slightly, and Lysandra rushed to support him. "Your Grace, you shouldn't have come. You're not well enough." "I couldn't let you face him alone," Caius said quietly. "Even knowing the groundskeepers would be nearby, I couldn't stay behind, not after everything you've done to protect me." Their eyes met, and Lysandra felt the weight of all her secrets pressing down on her chest. This was the moment. She could let him believe she was a hero, or she could tell the truth. "Your Grace, there's something I must confess. Before your illness, I came here under false pretenses," Vesper's voice interrupted. The Duchess emerged from the trees. "Lady Atherton's father owed Caius a significant debt, and she approached us seeking an arrangement to work off that obligation. Isn't that right?" Lysandra stared at Vespers, understanding the lifeline being offered. The Duchess was giving her an out. All she had to do was take it. But she couldn't. Not anymore.
"No," Lysandra said softly. "That's not the truth. Your Grace, I need to tell you what really happened that day in the library." They returned to the manor with Ashworth bound for the magistrate. But Lysandra felt no victory, only the sick, heavy weight of impending confession. Now they stood in the same library where it had all begun. Caius sat in his chair, still weak, Vespers by the fireplace, resigned, and Lysandra in the center, hands clasped to keep them from shaking. "Your Grace," she began, "6 weeks ago I came to this house with a single purpose, to poison you and steal the calamitous debenture that gave you claim to my family's estate." Caius's face went very still. "What?" "My father's gambling debt left us facing complete ruin. I was desperate, terrified for my mother and sister. I believed that if you died, the debt would be voided, and my family would be saved. So I dissolved a powder in the honey jar and prepared tea. I watched you reach for that cup, ready to commit murder to save the people I loved. The words came faster now. Your mother caught me. She saw what I had done and stopped you from drinking. She could have had me arrested, hanged for attempted murder. Instead, she blackmailed me with a secret that would destroy my family. She forced me to stay here, to protect you, to work off my crime by becoming your guardian. Lysandra's voice cracked. Everything I've done these past weeks was initially done under duress, but somewhere along the way it stopped being about obligation or blackmail. I came to know you, to see the man I had reduced to a signature on a piece of paper, and I realized the full horror of what I had almost done. She met his eyes. When I threw myself into danger today with Ashworth, it wasn't because your mother was holding that secret over me anymore. It was because I owed you my genuine protection. Because somewhere, in these weeks of forced proximity, I fell in love with the man I tried to kill. And I would rather die protecting you than live knowing I had let you come to harm. The silence that followed was devastating.
Caius sat frozen, his face a mask of shock and hurt. Vespers remained by the fireplace, saying nothing. The clock ticked, marking each painful second. Finally, Caius spoke, his voice rough. You tried to murder me. Yes. And my mother blackmailed you into staying here, threatening to destroy your family if you failed. Yes. So every moment of our work together, every conversation, every smile, it was all a lie? At first, Lysandra whispered, but not at the end. Your Grace, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable, but I needed you to know the truth before I leave here. You deserve that much. Caius stood slowly, moving toward her. Lysandra braced herself for his anger, his condemnation. But when he spoke, his voice was controlled, almost clinical. Tell me about your family, about what drove you to such desperation. The request caught her off guard. Your Grace? I want to understand, not justify, but understand. Please. So Lysandra told him about her father's descent into gambling, his loss of the estate in a single drunken night, about her mother's gentle heartbreak and her sister's innocent belief that everything would somehow work out, about the mounting debts, the creditors circling, the realization that they would lose everything. I knew it was wrong, she finished. I knew it the moment I dissolved that powder, but I convinced myself that one man's life weighed less than the lives of 3 women facing destitution. I was wrong, so terribly, horribly wrong. Caius was quiet for a long time. Then he turned to his mother. The 7-word secret, was it real? Vespers met her son's gaze steadily. No. It was a fabrication designed to keep Lady Atherton compliant while I assessed whether she was truly a threat or simply a desperate woman who had made an unforgivable choice. I orchestrated the entire thing, not just to save you, but to find someone worthy of you. So you manipulated her as thoroughly as Ashworth tried to manipulate us. I protected you, Vespers said firmly, and in doing so, I gave Lady Atherton the opportunity to redeem herself, not through easy forgiveness, but through genuine sacrifice and service. She could have run. She could have failed. Instead, she uncovered a real threat and saved your life at risk to her own. Caius turned back to Lysandra. What do you want from me? Forgiveness? Absolution? Nothing, Lysandra said honestly. I want nothing from you, Your Grace. I told you the truth because you deserved to know, not because I expected anything in return. I will leave here today, and you will never have to see me again. The only thing I ask is that you don't punish my mother and sister for my crimes. Your family's debt, Caius said slowly. It's still real, isn't it? The calamitous debenture. Yes. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and withdrew the familiar document. Lysandra watched, her fart in her throat, as Caius unfolded the paper. Then he tore it in half. Your Grace, my father won this debt through manipulation of a drunk, desperate man, Caius said, tearing the document again and again until it was nothing but scraps. He collected such debts as trophies. When I inherited his affairs, I was appalled by what I discovered. I had already intended to forgive this debt, but had not yet formalized the arrangements. He let the pieces fall onto the desk. Your father's debt is erased, not as a reward for your recent actions, but because it should never have existed in the first place. Your family is free of that burden. Lysandra felt tears streaming down her face. I don't understand. After what I tried to do, you tried to kill me out of desperation to save your family. It was wrong, unforgivable, but what you became in these past weeks, the woman who worked tirelessly to protect me, who uncovered a genuine threat, who threw herself into danger to save my life, that woman is not a monster. She is someone who made a horrific mistake and then spent every day since trying to atone for it.
He moved closer, his voice dropping. What you did was terrible, but I have been thinking about the conversation we had regarding my tenants, about seeing them as human beings rather than assets to be exploited. You reduced me to a signature on a document because you were drowning. I would like to believe I would never make such a choice, but I honestly don't know what I would do if faced with similar desperation. So what happens now? Lysandra whispered. Now you leave, as you said. You return to your family with the knowledge that their future is secure. You rebuild your life. Caius paused. And perhaps in 6 months or a year, when the horror of all this has faded somewhat, you might accept an invitation to tea, unpoisoned tea, prepared by my staff, in a very public setting where you will be under no duress or threat. Lysandra stared at him. You would want to see me again. I find myself curious about the woman you will become, Lady Atherton. The woman who chose redemption over comfort, truth over easy lies. I'm not offering forgiveness. I don't know if I can fully forgive attempted murder. But I am offering the possibility of understanding, perhaps even, eventually, friendship. It was more than she deserved, more than she had ever hoped for. Thank you, Your Grace, she managed, for your mercy, if not your forgiveness. Thank yourself, Caius replied. You earned this through your own choices these past weeks, not through my generosity. If you've watched or listened up to this point, comment the country you are watching this from. Represent your country. 6 months later, the invitation arrived on thick cream-colored paper, sealed with the Ravenswood crest. Lady Lysandra Atherton turned it over in her hands, her heart racing as she broke the seal. Lady Atherton, I hope this letter finds you and your family well. I am writing to invite you to tea at Ravenswood Manor on the 15th of next month at 3 o'clock. My mother will be present as chaperone, and I promise the tea will be prepared entirely by my household staff. I have recently acquired a remarkable book on botanical poisons that I thought might interest you. I would value your thoughts on the author's classifications, given your unique perspective. I remain, with cautious optimism, Caius Ravenswood. Lysandra couldn't help but laugh, a sound of genuine joy mixed with disbelief. Only Caius would invite her to discuss botanical poisons over tea, acknowledging their terrible history with such dry humor. She looked around the parlor of their restored family estate. Her mother sat by the window, embroidering peacefully. Her sister practiced piano in the next room, her music bright and cheerful. They had survived. More than survived. They had rebuilt. And Lysandra herself had changed. She had spent these 6 months in careful reflection, understanding the full weight of what she had almost done. She had volunteered at the local hospital, caring for the sick as a form of penance. She had rebuilt her relationship with her mother and sister. She was not redeemed. She might never be fully redeemed, but she was trying every day to be better than the worst version of herself. Lysandra picked up her pen and wrote her response. Your Grace, I accept your invitation with gratitude and no small amount of trepidation. I would be honored to discuss botanical poisons with you, though I hope never to employ such knowledge again. I look forward to tea, prepared by your staff, in a very public setting. I remain, with grateful sincerity, Lysandra Atherton. As she sealed the letter, she thought about the journey from that terrible day in the library to this moment of cautious hope. She had poisoned his tea. His mother had held her captive with a 7-word secret. And somehow, impossibly, from all that darkness, the possibility of something genuine had emerged. Not love, not yet, perhaps not ever, but understanding, honesty, and the slow, difficult work of building trust from the ashes of betrayal. It was more than she deserved. It was enough.